Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the senior minister of Lake Street Church, none other than Reverend Dr. Michael Woolf. Welcome, Mr. Michael, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. I'm an American Baptist pastor, and I am really delighted to be here today talking about a book. My wife and I, Reverend Dr. Anna Piela, have been a part of thinking about how Christians can confront Islamophobia for many years. And the book we wrote emerges really out of our ministry and the sense that it's really important for Christians to understand more about their Muslim neighbors and be able to work together within the church to confront the Islamophobia we find in churches, because churches really had a big part of starting the discourse of Islamophobia, and they perpetuate it. But the good news is churches can also be really important sites of learning about other religions, and they can empower a better, more pluralistic world.
Indeed, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Michael. Thank you. And today, let's talk about from the apology to action, the spiritual work of dismantling Islamophobia. The title itself is spiritual work. How is dismantling Islamophobia a spiritual practice distinct from your just a political, intellectual, or social one?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I can say that learning more about Islam has really made me a much better pastor and a much better Christian in many ways. So, for instance, with the classic example I like to give is that so many Christians, they would sort of say, well, the Trinity is this sort of mystery. It's a key theological doctrine, but people don't know a lot about it. And so, what ends up happening is they sort of hand wave that. But there exists within Islam, for instance, a string of critiques dating back 1,500 years that really opened the door for us to understand more about that key theological doctrine. So learning about another religion can help make us more into our own religion. We can understand just a little bit more through comparison. Max Muller said, "The person who knows one religion knows none," and I think that that is really true. Also, for Christians, that call to love our neighbor is supposed to be really paramount. It's how we live out the gospel, and is really important that we understand that Christians are causing generally a lot of harm around Islamophobia. And what we have to do is to be able to own some of that and to transform our churches into spaces and Bible studies wherever into spaces that can really take this head on.
Indeed. Mr. Michael, you position apology as a starting point. What constitutes a true apology in the context versus a performative one that actually hinders progress?
Sure. Apology has a couple of meanings, right? So, apology in this case, yeah, you could apologize for the rhetoric, but it's not actually going to address what's going on. So many Christians learn how to be Islamophobic in churches when stereotypes are given amongst people who have absolutely no knowledge about a really venerable tradition. So the more we're able to make Islam in worship spaces a pure tradition, the more that we're actually able to help people understand that is a rich tradition with nuance and situated as a peer and as an intellectual and spiritual peer. So really it's about action. It's about getting in our communities. It's about actually having Muslim neighbors and friends in cities. This is particularly important and also easier statistically. You're more likely to be close to a mosque, for instance, some sort of a Muslim community center in a city. And if you are in that city, then you are able to form these relationships that can help when real times of Islamophobic hate strike, which we've seen after the October 7th attack in Gaza, and all the fallout from there. We've seen a lot of Islamophobic hate crime increase, as well as anti-Semitism. And what we've noticed is a lot of Christian partners taking a step back from their Muslim partners, and that's really a shame, because right now I think we need each other more than ever to create that sort of pluralistic vision of a world where everyone can thrive and everyone can worship.
Definitely, let's unite together, people, for
Yeah.
for a greater good. What are the core fears, biases, or inherited narratives that you believe people must first courageously confront within themselves before they can effectively take external action?
Right. So, I mean, there are plenty of one of the things that happens is when people compare the worst parts or the most difficult parts to understand of the Quran with the best parts of Scripture. And this is a mistake. It's kind of like the comparing. Everyone has had this experience of Facebook or Instagram. You compare your worst moments to the highlight reel that someone else is putting up. It's really not fair. Uh, I think people have to read and engage with Islamic scripture, both Hadith and in the Quran. And you're going to find a rich, important theological document that's been in conversation with Christianity since the very beginning, because it came after Christianity. And in there, you're going to find Jesus, you're going to find prophets, you're going to find a lot of shared figures and practices. But first is what finding out what the Quran says. I mean, I think that that's a really important first step. And seeing it as a beautiful document, I think that people will find that it's beautiful. 100 different beautiful names for God in the Quran, for instance. Another thing that folks have is this sense that Islam is a particularly violent religion, which is just both statistically false, sociologically false. And also, if you look at the tradition, Christianity has plenty of violence in its text, but we sort of hand wave those, we excuse those because Christianity is the hegemonic power. It is the religion with the most power in the United States. And because of that, it sort of gets a pass. And really, if you engage with Islam and you engage with your Muslim neighbors, you're going to find folks who have rich resources to draw on for peacemaking and peace building, as well as folks who are have rich resources drawn for interfaith dialogue that come from the Muslim tradition as well. The other thing that people like to talk about is we've actually fought wars with the discourse and with the language of trying to liberate women from something like the hijab or the niqab. But you're going to find verses again in scripture that talk about the domination of women, and women actually there are women's mosques, and women do have a lot more mobility than your average American Christian imagines in Islamic spaces.
Interesting indeed. Mr. Michael, how does the spiritual work help someone move from the paralysis of a guilt into empowerment of a sacred responsibility?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think guilt does no one any favors in anything that we want to do. You can't go and hold yourself responsible, for instance, for Peter Abelard 1,000 years ago in his translation of the Quran that sort of rendered it into a enemy in the West. But you can take responsibility for how you talk about Muslims, and especially if you're a religious leader or you're in a church, what you allow to be said without standing up for that. And so this book really empowers people to both understand more about the tradition and gives them tools for how to stand up for their Muslim neighbors in churches and in public. And I think that that is really important. What we want is we want relationships to be built, and we want folks to be able to feel empowered to act in their context. We do not have, most of us do not have the sort of platform where we can change the world with our ideas. But what we do have is we have our little corner of this world that we do affect, and we do have a great deal of responsibility for how we act in that. And I think we have some spiritual responsibility for how we think about and how we talk about and how we engage with our Muslim neighbors and friends.
Mr. Michael, tell us on the journey from internal work to external action. For someone who has done the internal reflection and wants to move to action, what is the powerful yet manageable first step they can take in their immediate community?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the first steps that you can do is you can find a mosque near you and look at their interfaith events. Almost every mosque is going to have some sort of outreach or some sort of engagement with the broader community. And that's because Muslims are either the first or second, depending on whatever metric you use, most discriminated against religious group in the United States. And so they're in a pretty hostile environment. And so they're constantly trying to teach and educate folks in their community, and they're engaged in interfaith dialogue. Iftar season's coming up here in this winter. It's going to start in February, and there are going to be a lot of interfaith iftars where guests are invited. Maybe you want to go to one of those. I think that that is a great time where you can meet folks in your community, where you can share a meal, and where you can perhaps make some new friends and take on some projects together. I think that that's really a great first step.
The first step, indeed. What does a spiritually grounded, compassionate intervention look like when we hear a family member or colleague make a Islamophobic comment rather than shaming one?
Yeah, so I don't think it's about shame, but it's also about education. A lot of people are repeating things that they find in our broader culture, and we do this all the time without thinking. But one of the ways that you can stand up is not necessarily to call out, but to call people in and to say, "Hey, you are participating in this broader set of ideas that you've received. You didn't invent them." But you want to think about what you're passing on when you're passing on stereotypes, because these have real damaging effects on communities. It's not just words; they often erupt into hateful acts and can cause a lot of fear. So you want to be careful with what you say, and you want to build relationships with people who are saying those things. So I don't think it's necessarily a call out. You shouldn't cancel people, but you should, if you're a friend and you have a relationship, then you can talk to them about that. And the more you know about Islam as a religious tradition, and the more you're engaged with that work, the more you're going to be able to have an effective conversation about that. A lot of the things that are shared, we talked about at the start of this broadcast, are pretty easily disproven. There's been a lot of research. There's no lack of information here. It's just it's not necessarily permeating to your average person, and your average religious person, I think, is what we can say. It has a lot of responsibility, and I think you can build on those relationships to try to help people approach the issue with nuance.
Try the other people to understand what is really all about. And on systemic analysis and sustained commitment, Mr. Michael, how does this work differ for people of faith from other traditions, secular individuals, and those who belong to other marginalized groups?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely there's a big difference, and one of the big differences is power. Like I said, Christianity is the hegemonic religious power in the United States, and therefore can do most of the harm. So that's sort of we're also Christians, so we're trying to target folks who have the most ability to change the narrative and to do the most good, and the most power to shift those narratives. But there are other folks, of course. Islamophobia takes place in a variety of different contexts, but trying to understand more about the religion, of course, and work to undo some of that can really have some positive effects. Islamophobia is also linked with, of course, anti-Semitism. They really go hand in hand. There's just not been a ton of resources out there for how to think about confronting Islamophobia from a Christian perspective, whereas there are quite a few resources around anti-Semitism. But I think it's important to think about these two issues as twinned and joined, and they both require people of faith to really address them and to step up into that space, to be brave.
Yes, be brave to step up, people. Islamophobia often spikes after a terrorist attacks but fades from the public discourse. How do we build a sustained, committed movement that does not operate on a crisis response model?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's hard to operate in the middle of a crisis. What we have to do, to borrow a religious metaphor, is to build the ark before the flood. So it's about having those relationships locally. I mean, I think you should think hyper locally. The more we have relationships in a given community, in a city, in a town, in a county, the more likely you're going to be able to support each other in times of crisis, and also the more you're going to be able to do joint education, so that it's more less likely that there is going to be one of these incidences of Islamophobic hate. So if you actually build these robust frameworks and you're doing education in your community ahead of time, I think that it really can have a positive effect and reduce the instances where these words become hateful actions. And so I think we have to build that art before the flood, and the book's sort of about doing just that, and how we engage in that work.
Definitely. And Mr. Michael, how does an understanding of intersectionality, that Muslims are also black, LGBTQ plus, women immigrants, or deepen and complicate the work of dismantling
Yeah,
Islamophobia?
Islamophobia, I think it's really important. And we have a whole section in this book. Islamophobia is closely linked, and sometimes directly coincides, overlaps, whatever you want to say, with racism and structural racism. So, anti-black racism is definitely a big part of Islamophobia. You see this when folks who are born here are treated as if they are not part of the American project. And that happens in a variety of contexts racially in this country, but it happens in religious contexts too. You also can see that it's not necessarily just religious, by the fact that Sikh individuals also face a lot of hate crimes. They wear a distinctive turban, and folks think that they're Muslim, and come after them as well. So I think, like I said, it's linked to anti-Semitism. It's linked to anti-black racism, and it's also linked to, I think, Palestinian Arab identity post October 7th is also under attack, and has become a flashpoint of hate as well. So all those things are linked together. It's not just one issue.
Mr. Michael, as the senior minister of Lake Street Church, what are your short term and long term goals?
Oh, well, my short term and long term goals. My short term goal is to continue to do work to address the crisis that ICE is having in Chicagoland, which is where I pastor, and to continue to worship with my community and build hope in what is a real moral and spiritual crisis that we're facing. And part of that, of course, is continuing to do the work on Islamophobia, but it's a whole host of things. Evanston's the place where municipal reparations got its start, and I do a lot of work on reparations. Long-term goal, I think, is to continue to stay at this church and continue to grow our capacity to do good in the world, to spread a message of love that I think is really desperately needed in this time.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Michael, and looking forward for more success. And what would be a piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Oh, they want to be like me? Well, meet some Muslim neighbors. Continue to think deeply about your tradition and where you are in your context, and be able to think outside the box a little bit about your religion. And continue to be on the journey, a uh, constant learning journey, really, and growing in the sacred.
Yes, think outside the box, people. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Michael. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, I would like to recommend Jordan Denari Duffner's book, Islamophobia: What Christians Should Know. I think that was a big part of an important book that we read when we were writing this book, and we sort of wanted to write a book for Christians that also had some lectionary commentary in there for people who are doing Bible studies or for people who preach, to be able to make it really easy to bring these conversations outside of the study, outside of a book you read, into the community. And so it's a very practical book, and it builds, off the folks who came before, like Jordan Denari.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Michael. Thank you, thank you. And how does an understanding of uh, Islamophobia in the broader concept of our life?
So understanding Islamophobia and our role in it, I think, changes us from people who are sort of passive and who are just going with the flow and repeating a bunch of rhetoric, and just sort of imbibing things. It changes us into responsible actors who can actually have agency and who can change our, like I said, our little corner of the world to be a little better, a little brighter. and can really make justice and peace a big part of what we do.
Mr. Michael, how do you measure the success of this spiritual work? Is it a changed policy, shifted relationships, or something else tangible?
Yeah, I think I get to walk alongside people in community, and so I see how they change over time. And so that's what I look for: is how are people engaging with these issues over time? Are they growing in their spiritual life? Are they growing in how they think about things? I think that is the primary gauge I have, and we also have an action network, right? So it's how many people show up to events for challenging Islamophobia together, Chicagoland, that I run with my wife, and the book sort of is an outcropping of that. How many people show up to our Reading the Quran in Churches initiative? How many people ask questions, and how many people say, "Wow, I never really knew that about Islam."
Mm, yes, interesting. Mr. Michael, and what do you say to someone who believes that focusing on spiritual introspection is a luxury that distract from the urgent need for political and legal action?
Right. So we're in the United States. So if you want to do theological action, you want to do spiritual action, you are doing political action in many ways. So, like I said, Christians have a lot of power in this country. The more Christians who actually organize around Christianity and against stuff that we can say like white Christian nationalism and build a movement that's towards a pluralistic democracy, the better and more healthy our democracy is going to be. The political work, the theological work, they're intertwined and interconnected in ways, and I don't see them as very different.
Mr. Michael, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season. Abstract poetry in second season. I'm a book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season. I'm a food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, a movie 101 review, music 101 our fourth season. Science 101, sex 101 in its second season. I'm a baby podcast law 101, mental health 101, and Bible verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Michael, if is it spiritual work is dismantling is truly successful, what does the resulting society look like, feel like, and how does the function for a Muslim child growing up within?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it looks like not having to explain your religion over and over again, and it looks like feeling that you can grow safe, and that you're part of a religious tradition that's respected by the hegemonic religious tradition, which is Christianity in the United States. So I think that would be a big shift. That is something that we're praying for ardently, and I think it is advanced a little bit by the book.
Yes, and Mr. Michael Wolf, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank you.
Yes, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. Yeah. The book is called "Confronting Islamophobia in the Church: Liturgical Tools for Justice." It's available for pre-order right now at Judson Press, and it'll be out January 8th. And so go ahead and pre-order that. And if you're in Chicagoland or you're interested in our work, then you can check us out at Challenging Islamophobia Together Chicagoland, and that is citchicagoland.org.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Michael Wolf because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering advocacy, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Monica people, see you soon.